everyone, welcome to another reading video. Today I have something very exciting for us, and that is Pocketskottish Pocket Scottish Legends. 25 classics to delight and entertain. As you may know, or maybe not, if you haven't seen my Scotland vlog, I went to Scotland. No surprise there. And I got a lot of books, and one of them was this one because it's just really nicely illustrated, and of course the nice stories, etc. I really like these illustrations being in a type of like a more gothic style. I have not read any. I believe I've heard a few because I went on quite a few tours, and our tour guides, of course, did presented us with a few of these legends and tales, etc., etc. So we have a few of those here. So why don't I go through the list of titles here, and yes, then we can choose. Beira, Bira, Beira, B-E-I-R-A. Beira, Beira. Depending on the language that you know, you might read it differently, but she is the queen of winter. Angus and Bright. Kate, Cracker Nuts. The Well at the World's End. That sounds interesting. Tom Lynn. Gold Tree and Silver Tree. The Nimble Tailor. Nimble Tailor? Okay. Angus, Assipattle, and the Stoorworm. Stoorworm? Okay, I think that I will be butchering majority of this. Also, my English is really not Englishing recently, that recently being today. So, anyway, The Lonely Giant, Finlay and the Giants, Old, A-U-L-D, Groovy, King David and the Stag, Thomas the Rhymer, Rashy Goat, Robert the Bruce and the Spider. That's a famous one. I think I might read that one. I think I might read that one. Robert, the Mermaid's Revenge, Saint Columba, the Loch Ness Monster, the Glaistig's Curse, the Selkie Hunter, Column and the Selkie, the Little Brown Calf, Molly, and the Troll, the Brownie, Whoopity Whoopity story. I seriously feel like I am reading English for the first time. Anyway, but first let us read the Robert the Bruce and the Spider legend, because it's a famous one and it has a really good moral of the story. So here we have, and also the illustration, Robert the Bruce and the Spider. Robert the Bruce was one of Scotland's greatest heroes, and one of the most famous stories about him concerns a spider. Bruce was fighting the English and for the independence of Scotland. The Scots had had a terrible defeat at the Battle of Falkirk, and Bruce took shelter in a cave while he decided what his next move would be. He was losing heart, and he wondered if Scotland could ever win the fight for independence. He was very close to giving up the struggle. As he supported himself against the damp wall of the cave, he noticed a movement out of the corner of his eye. A tiny spider was trying to spin a web from the roof of the cave to the wall. The little creature started by spinning a single fine strand, and then continued to spin all the way from the roof, but as soon as it reached the wall, the stand broke away from the roof, and the little spider had to go back to the roof and start again. Every time the spider reached the wall, the strand came away from its moorings. Each time it went back and started again. Bruce counted 6 attempts, but of course the spider may have made many more before he started watching. Finally, the spider succeeded in attaching the first strand, and it then continued to weave its web without any more setbacks. At first, Bruce was just relieved that the spider had finally succeeded, but then he began to understand that there was a lesson in all this for him. If the little spider did not give up, how could he give up in his fight to free his country from the English? When he had rested, Bruce took up his sword again, and he finally had a great victory at the Battle of Bannockburn, a battle that turned the tide of the war in favor of the Scots. No one is really sure where the cave in which Bruce rested is located. Some say it was on Rathlin Island off the coast of Ireland, which is where Bruce had sought refuge in 1306, not long after he had been crowned king. Others say it was in Bruce's cave at Kilpatrick or King's Cave on Jura. But where the cave is located isn't really all that important. What matters is the moral of the story, which still applies today. If at first you don't succeed, try, and try again. And there's another illustration of the Bruce. So this legend was told by one of my guides during one of my visits, and I thought that it was a good story. I mean, of course, because of the lesson, right? And yeah, I mean, hopefully it is based on something true that historically actually happened. I mean, Robert the Bruce was an actual person, like a real person, right? So, yeah, hopefully it was something that happened and that inspired him to do all that. Anyway, let's go back to our list here. This was a rather short one. Should we go for the Loch Ness Monster one? I think we should. I'm certain it's going to be popular. Again, one of our guides. I don't remember which one. I traveled on a few things with different guides, so yeah. But they told us a lot about Loch Monster, about the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, how we very affectionately call her. There are a lot of things about Nessie, especially in the Highlands region, but in any case, let's hear this legend. The Loch Ness Monster in this illustration of a boy with something white. Davy lived with his parents on the shores of Loch Ness, where they ran a bed and breakfast. During a long summer holidays, he always got bored and lonely because all his friends lived in the village and his parents were usually too busy to take him there. One fine summer's day, Davy was trying to think of something to do to amuse himself, but he was bored with all his toys. "Can I go down to the loch?" he asked his mother. "I could practice skimming stones across the water. "All right, so," she agreed. "But don't get your feet wet and watch out for that monster." She laughed because none of the locals really believed in the monster. It was something for the tourists, and it was good for business. So Davy went down to the loch and walked along the shore, looking for some good skimming stones. When he had collected a good-sized pile, he stood about a meter from the water edge and started skimming. He wasn't very good at it, and most of the stones splashed right into the water on the first bounce. But then he got lucky, and a really flat, polished stone bounced once, twice, 3 times. Ouch! Davy turned to look behind him and up and down the shore, but he could not see anyone. He began skimming again, and after a few dart throws, he managed to bounce a stone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "Ouch! Why are you throwing stones at me? What have I ever done to you?" Davy tried to work out where the angry voice was coming from, and his best guess was the stand of rushes around the edge of the loch. Then, to his amazement, he saw a shiny black head appearing out of the rushes. It started coming towards him, followed by 3 strange, shiny black humps. When the head was within speaking distance, its mouth opened, showing a jaw filled with uneven yellow teeth. Here it is. "Who are you?" stammered Davy, suddenly wondering if his mother was right about the Loch Ness monster after all. "Why, I'm Nessie, and this is my loch, and I don't take kindly on to having stones lobbled at me." "I wasn't throwing them at you," said Davy, "but I thought—" I know," said Nessie. "You thought I didn't exist, but, to be honest, ever since that boring Columba stopped me from eating people, life has been no fun. So I've been keeping my head down." "Gosh," said Davy, "do you really not eat people anymore?" "No, I can't," said Nessie regretfully. "They are completely indigestible. I have to live off greens these days. Yuck." Look at them becoming friends. Davy and Nessie. Underneath its calm surface, the loch was like a dream world, with forests. Wait, did I skip something? Yes, I did. Right. "But," she added, "it's nice to have someone to talk to. Fancy a ride around my loch." I can't swim very well," started Davy. "And my mother told me not to get my feet wet, but," he added longingly, because this could be the best adventure he would ever have. "Oh, come on," wailed Nessie. "I'll have you back in no time. Your mother will never know." This sounds like a maybe terrible idea. Look at this cute drawing. So Davy waded out into the loch and climbed onto Nessie's neck. Suddenly they were surging through the water, and then they were diving down beneath the surface. "Oh no," thought Davy, "I'm going to drown." But he felt something pushing out behind both his ears, and when he touched the back of his head, he realized that he had grown gills so that he could breathe like the fishes. Interesting, this magic of growing gills. Underneath its calm surface, the loch was like a dream world, with forests of waterweed and the transparent figures of water sprites weaving their way in and out of the greenery, and rocks disturbing the brown trout having a snooze beneath them. Every now and then Nessie slowed down to take a bite out of the wheat. Then she picked up speed again. When they had been around the loch 2 or 3 times, Nessie's surface and Davy could see that they were back where they had started. He climbed off her neck and waded back to the shore. "But I'm soaking wet," he said. "Now my mother will know that I was in the loch." "Just as well I have what?" "Just as well I have a bit of dragon blood then," said Nessie, and a blast of warm air from her huge mouth dried Davy and his clothes and even his shoes in less than a minute. He felt behind his ears for the gills, but they had shriveled up as soon as he was dry. Davy ran home and burst through the back door just in time for tea. "Well," smiled his mother, "did you meet the monster then?" But Davy said nothing. Nessie was his secret. Here we have him being dried. And that's the end of this legend. I went on a Loch Ness cruise and traveled around the loch, and of course during the cruise I was on the loch. And it's very curious because the loch itself is very like narrow and very deep. Actually, the deepest point is right next to the Urquhart castle where I went as well, and it's also the thickness wise, it is also the thickest point, basically. Widest point, that's the correct word. Widest point. And it is indeed very, very deep. During the cruise, I was able to see like the measurements, like they have like a radar reading from the bottom. I mean, from the bottom, from the boat to the bottom, basically. And you can actually see the number. What's the depth? What was the depth that the boat was at? And it is indeed very deep. And the lovely gentleman that was telling or like guiding us through the cruise, he said that he did see the monster. So he was a believer. Actually, the previous legend of Saint Columba also speaks about Loch Ness monster. And it is basically that the Saint Columba is the saint that brought Christianity to Highlands in Scotland, and he was told that someone was eaten or drowned in the lake or in the loch, and he went there and he put one of his men as bait into the lake, so they had to swim around the lake to bait the monster out. And apparently they did see the monster, and then Saint Columba, with his Christian power, was able to spook the monster away. And that's why in this legend she says that she cannot eat people anymore because of Saint Columba. So anyway, back to the cruise, and our guide who said that he saw something, he and his colleagues saw something, and I spoke with him because there are a few theories. I mean, I do enjoy me some conspiracy theories and supernatural things, beings, etc., etc. I like those stories. I don't believe all of them, or anyway, I'm a skeptic, but I enjoy it, But anyway, there are many theories. There could be droughts. Droughts are the kind of species that if they reproduce a lot, they also grow very, very large, because especially in the lake, they don't have predators. So in order to control the population, bigger trouts start to eat smaller trouts, and therefore they grow bigger and bigger. Anyway, so big trouts, eels as well. Apparently there was a test done for detecting genetic signature of animals in the lake. Obviously this was done with water, and of course they can only detect signature genes from creatures and animals that they know about. So again, their eels were detected in the lake. So could be like a massive eel, you know, that ate a lot of those trouts that were already really big. And again, something like an eel would look like what Nessie is described to look like. Anyway, but also there's another type of testing that was done. As you may know, Loch Ness is an ice age lake that was left from the glaciers shaping the the geography of Scotland and many other places, but that is why it has that shape as well. And it also is placed on the tectonic, not tectonic plate, separation. Actually, it is like a tectonic crack. I don't know how to explain it very scientifically. But anyway, there are two plates, continental plates, that are going separate ways. One is separating from the other, and the lake is exactly in the middle. That's why when you see how the lake is positioned on the map, it's kind of positioned on like a crack that runs through entire Scotland. Anyway, this all of this contributes to a formation of caves underneath the lake. And so through those caves, I don't know, maybe there's access to the ocean. In the ocean you have bigger creatures like seals. I actually saw a seal next to the Eileen Donan castle, and at first I was like, oh my god, but like a seal, but this is a lake. And so I was like, okay, maybe I did see not the Loch Ness monster, but the lake that is next to where the Eileen Donan castle is located. But it's not an actual lake. It has contact with the sea, and therefore obviously there is access for seals to come in and, you know, have their fun. But again, the caves and the cracks underneath the Loch Ness could be something that gives access to, again, creatures from the ocean to be present in the lake from time to time. Or again, it gives access to an underworld, under crust, earth crusts, ocean that has its own creatures that we don't know about, creatures that, again, we don't have genetic signature to detect. And since the lake is so deep, we cannot find them. The water is so black, you really cannot see anything. Maybe that's the part that creates the monster, because the water being so black, you know, your imagination goes wild, and people are afraid of water and deep water. And not only that, like when you can when there's deep water and you can see through it, it's one thing, but when it's deep water and you can't see anything, it's a really different situation. So anyhow, that is my tangent about that. Shall we find another one, and maybe which one does sound like? Maybe The Lonely Giant. It sounds like Lonely Giant 82. There was quite a few legends that were mentioned during all my travels. But when I went to Isle of Skye, our guide told us a story about 5 sisters that are mountains on the Isle of Skye. Was it on the Isle of Skye already? I think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was either on the Isle of Skye or on our way there. So the story is about 7 sisters, and 2 of them were pretty, but the other 5 weren't so lucky with their looks, and their father was very much concerned about them all getting married. And there was some bashing of some Irish soldiers that came by and decided to marry the 2 pretty daughters or sisters. And they tricked the old man because they told him that actually the man had a condition for them to marry his daughters. They had to bring others to marry the other 5. And so the Irish sailors, soldiers, etc., men said that they had cousins that they would send back, so then these cousins could marry the other 5 girls. And so they agreed on that, and so the 2 Irish men married the daughters and left with them. But then, of course, time went by and no further man showed up. And so the old man went to a witch or like a fairy or something, and the witch turned his wish into true. What he wished for was for his daughters to stay the same and be pretty while waiting for their man. And so the 5 daughters turned into 5 mountains, and they are still standing because apparently none of the cousins that were promised to them showed up. Anyway, but there's also, everything is around that kind of folklore, like the old man of Store. The folklore says that it's a couple, a man and a woman, who like to go on a walk and sat there at that point gossiping. And so the fairies, who are depicted in a different way in Scottish and Irish folklore, because they really like mess with people. And they are magic, but they are also like always get something in return. They don't do magic just for, you know, from their good free will. So the fairies would listen to the gossip of this couple who went there always to the same spot. They would sit there, and you know, the fairies would listen to their talking. But then, you know, time passed by, and yeah, the couple turned older and older. And one day on their way there up, they said that it was too tiresome, so they could not, this would be the last time that they went there and sat there, you know, gossiping. And when the fairies heard this, they were upset because the gossip would not come to them anymore. And yeah, they came and introduced themselves to the couple, and then basically after all that situation, exchange, the fairies decided to turn the couple into stone, so they would stay there, you know, and gossip, tell the stories, and the fairies could still listen to them forever, basically. I don't know what kind of stories they would tell if they are always at the same place, right? But anyway, that's how the story goes. And apparently, the standing stone is the man that was standing, and the one that was lower, that is lower, is the woman, because she was sitting down. And that's the story about the old man of stone. I have a few more that I remember, but seriously, I'll just read this one. The Lonely Giant. Once upon a time, there was a giant called Hamish, who was very lonely. He wasn't fierce like other giants, and he did not go around stamping on the ground and bellowing just so that he could frighten people. He wasn't really very interested in frightening people. He would have preferred to have had a few friends. In fact, he did have one friend, Flora, the crofter's daughter. However, the Hamish did not see very much of Flora, so he often felt very lonely indeed. He decided to ask Flora if she had any advice for him. Secretly, he was in love with Flora and would have liked to ask her to marry him, but he was much bigger than she was, and he knew the idea was completely ridiculous. When he found Flora sitting at the door of her father's cottage, enjoying the sun with her eyes closed, he crept up on her, picked her up with one hand, and swung her around. "Put me down," squealed Flora. "Sometimes you forget how big you are. I wish you were smaller, or I was bigger, and then things could be different." "How could they be different?" asked Hamish, puzzled. "Never mind," laughed Flora. "So why have you come to see me?" "Well," sighed Hamish, "I came to ask if you could advise me on how to not be so lonely. I never seem to meet any new friends." "What you need," said Flora, "is to find yourself a giant wife." "But where would I find one?" said Hamish. "I don't think I've ever even met a giantess." "Well, there must be some," said Flora. "Otherwise, Otherwise, where would all the baby giants come from?" "That's true," said Hamish. "Perhaps I should go and on a hike and see if I can find any." And off he went, jumping from hill to hill, and half an hour later he had reached the coast. He was walking along the beach when he saw a strange sight. a small blue island 3 giants' length from the water. As he drew closer, he could see that the island was moving, and then he realized that the island was actually a blue whale that had somehow got himself stranded on a sandbank. When the whale saw Hamish, he called out, "Help! Help me, please!" And there we have Hamish and the whale. "How did you end up so far from the water?" asked Hamish. "I'm not entirely sure," replied the whale. "I fell asleep on a sandbank, and when I woke up, the sea had disappeared." "Well, that's probably because the tide has gone out," said Hamish. "Do you want me to drag you back to the water, or can you wait until the tide comes in again?" "Oh, I don't think I can wait that long," moaned the whale. "My skin is blistering in the sun already." "Well, I'll try to pull you," offered Hamish, "although you are a heavy weight, even for a large person like me." He took hold of the whale's huge tail and pulled until he reached the water's edge. Then he pushed against the side of the whale until he heard a splash. A whale was swimming happily again. "Thank you," said the whale. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along. What are you doing in this neighborhood, anyway?" "Well, I was hoping to find a giantess so that I could ask her to marry me. I'm very lonely, you see," said Hamish sadly. "I know a giantess," said the whale. "She lives on that island over there, but I don't know if you'd want to marry her. She's very loud." "Well, perhaps I should introduce myself at least," said Hamish. "Beggars can be choosers, after all. But how would I get to the island? I can't swim, and my mother told me that I should always take care to avoid salt water, although she never said why." "There's nothing wrong with salt water," said the whale. "It's very healthy, in fact. You can take hold of my tail, and I'll drop you off at the island," he offered. "I owe you a favor for saving me." So, ignoring his mother's advice, Hamish waded into the sea, took a firm grip on the whale's tail, and off they went. They travelled quite slowly because the whale found Hamish to be a heavy burden, and the giant began to enjoy himself as he moved through the water. Then the whale got faster and faster. "Hey, what's happening?" shouted Hamish. "I can hardly keep hold of your tail." "I'm not sure," replied the whale. "You feel lighter than when we set out." He slowed down a bit, and Hamish looked down at his hands. They were half the size they used to be. What could have happened? "Oh no!" he shrieked. "Now I know why my mother warned me about salt water. I think I have shrunk. What can I do?" "Do you like being a giant?" asked the whale. "Not particularly," said Hamish. "It's very hard to make friends." "Well," said the whale, "in that case, why don't I take you back and drop you off at the beach? I reckoned you'll be about the size of a human if you shrink at the same rate on the way back." "That would be very strange," said Hamish, as much to himself as to the whale. "All right, so take me back." And off they went, speeding through the water until the whale flipped his tail and Hamish landed on the sand. His clothes were so loose and long that he had to roll up his breeches and tie them around his waist with his bootlaces. His shirt fell off, so he made 3 holes in one of his socks and wore it as a vest. Then he started walking home. There we have Hamish wearing a sock. Interesting. By nightfall he had made hardly any progress, but he pressed on in the moonlight, traveling along barefoot. After hours and hours of walking, his poor feet were blistered and bruised. At daybreak he finally arrived at the front door of Flora's cottage, and there she was, fetching a fresh bucket of water from the well. She peered at Hamish, who was still quite tall, as if he reminded her of someone she knew but couldn't quite place him. "Don't you recognize me, Flora? It's me, Hamish." Flora was so surprised she dropped her bucket with a little shriek, and the rest of her family came running outside. They crowded around Hamish, pulling at his strange clothes. Then her mother went back into the house and came out with a suit of Flora's father's clothes. Once Hamish had put them on, he felt like a real person, even though the trousers and sleeves were too short. Flora thought that she had never seen such a handsome man. In the fullness of the time, they got married and were as happy as could be. They had 8 children, and although Hamish always worried that his giant genes would come out, not one of them grew past average height. And that's the story of Lonely Giant. I think I'm gonna stop here. I think there are many other amazing stories here. And again, I will absolutely read them. But for now, I just wanted to introduce you with these few. And yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this small reading session and also me rambling. Anyway, I hope you still find this relaxing, and yeah, I'll see you next time.